Recording, and yes, we are now live streaming. Hi, I'm Paul Sugarman with the Instant Shakespeare Company, and today we have a special treat, Mr. Pym Passes by A. A. Milne, which David Cedar has put together. So over to you, David.
Hi. Well, yes, we are doing probably A. A. Milne's most famous and popular play, Mr. Pym Passes By. Um, those of you who may not be familiar with A. A. Milne would certainly possibly be familiar with one of his creations, which was Winnie the Pooh. He also created Christopher Robin, but he also wrote a lot of plays. And this, I think, is probably his most famous and his best play. Um, so let's introduce everybody. I'm David Cedar, head of the Shaw Project, and I'm playing Mr. Pym.
Well, I'm Paula Hosa, and I'm playing Olivia.
Ben?
Still computers. Okay, I'm Bennett Poloshi, and I'll be George Martin, J.P.
Leah?
I'm Leah Schwartz. I'll be playing Dinah.
Clint?
I'm Clinton Powell. I'm reading Brian Strange.
And Sue?
I'm Susan Case. I'm playing Lady Martin and Anne the Maid.
Okay, so I'm going to set the scene. Act one. The morning room at Marden House, Buckinghamshire, decided more than 100 years ago that it was all right and has not bothered about itself since. Visitors to the house have called the result such different adjectives as mellow, old-fashioned, charming, even baronial and antique. But nobody ever said it was exciting. Sometimes Olivia wants it to be more exciting, and last week she rather let herself go over some new curtains. She still has the rings to put on. It is obvious that the curtains alone will overdo the excitement. They will have to be harmonized with the new carpet and cushions. Olivia has her eye on just the things, but one has to go carefully with George. What was good enough for his great-great-grandfather is good enough for him. However, we can trust Olivia to see him through it, although it may take time. There are three ways of coming into the room: by the open windows leading from the garden, by the doors to the right, or by the stairway from upright. Mr. Pym chooses the latter way, or rather, Anne chooses it for him, and Mr. Pym follows her. She comes down the steps and crosses to center, followed by Mr. Pym.
I'll tell Mr. Martin you're here, sir. Mr. Pym, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Pym, Mr. Caraway Pym. He doesn't know me, you understand, but if he could just spare me a few moments, and I gave you that letter.
Yes, sir, I'll give it to him.
Yes, it reminds me, oh dear me.
Yes, sir?
Well, dear me, I ought to have posted this. Oh, well, I must send a telegram. You have a telegraph office in the village?
Oh, yes, sir. If you turn to the left when you get outside the gates, it's about 100 yards down the hill. Turn to the left and down the hill.
Turn to the left and down the hill. Thank you. Very stupid of me to have forgotten.
Hello.
Oh, you must forgive me, but good morning, Mrs. Marden.
Oh, I say, I'm not Mrs. Marden. I'm Dinah.
Oh, then I will say, good morning, Miss Diana.
Now look here. If you and I are going to be friends, you mustn't do that. Dinah, not Diana. Do you remember it? There's a good man. Because I get so tired of correcting people. Have you come to stay with us?
Well, no, Miss Dinah.
That's right. I can see I shan't have to speak to you again. Now tell me your name, and I bet I get it right the first time. And do sit down.
Thank you. My name is Pym. Caraway Pym.
Pym. That's easy.
And I have a letter of introduction to your father.
Oh, no, now you're going wrong again, Mr. Pym. George isn't my father. He's my uncle. Uncle George. He doesn't like me calling him George. Olivia doesn't mind. I mean, she doesn't mind being called Olivia, but George is rather touchy. You see, he's been my guardian since I was about 2, and then about 5 years ago, he married a widow called Mrs. Telworthy.
Mrs. Telworthy.
That's Olivia. So she became my Aunt Olivia. Only she lets me drop the aunt. Get that?
I think so, Miss Marden.
I say you are quick, Mr. Pym. Well, if you take my advice, when you finish your business with George, you will hang about for a bit and see if you can't see Olivia. She's simply devastating. I don't wonder George fell in love with her.
It's only the merest matter of business. Just a few words with your uncle. Perhaps I'd better.
Oh, you must please yourself, Mr. Pym. I'm just giving you a friendly word of advice. Naturally, I was awfully glad to get such a magnificent aunt. Because after all, marriage is rather a toss-up, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I haven't had the experience.
And George might have gone off with anybody. It's different on the stage where guardians always marry their wards. But George couldn't marry me because I'm his niece. Mind you, I don't say that I should have had him because, in between ourselves, he's a little bit old-fashioned.
That's all you have. Most
Mrs. Telworth, they don't say you've forgotten already. Just when you were getting to be good at names. Mrs. Telworthy. You see, Olivia married the Telworthy man and went to Australia with him, and he drank himself to death in the bush, or wherever you drink yourself to death out there. And Olivia came home to England and met my uncle, and he fell in love with her and proposed to her. And he came into my room that night, I was about 14, and turned on the light and said, "Dinah, how would you like to have a beautiful aunt of your very own?" And I said, "Congratulations, George." That was the first time I called him George. Of course, I'd seen it coming for weeks. Telworthy, isn't that a funny name?
Oh, a most curious name, Telworthy. From Australia, you say?
Yes, I always say that he's probably still alive and would turn up here one morning and annoy George.
Oh,
But I'm afraid there's not much chance.
Miss Martin, really?
Well, of course, I don't really want it to happen, but it would be rather exciting, wouldn't it, Mr. Pym?
Exciting.
However, things like that never seem to occur down here somehow. There was a hayrick burnt last year, about a mile away, and that isn't the same, isn't it?
No, I should say that was certainly different.
Of course. Something very, very wonderful did happen last night. Oh, no, I'm not sure if I know you well enough.
Really, Miss Martin, you mustn't. I'm only a passerby. Here today and gone tomorrow. You really mustn't.
And yet there's something about you, Mr. Pym, which inspires confidence.
Oh, no. Really, you mustn't tell me.
The fact is, I got engaged last night.
Oh, dear me, let me congratulate you. I wish somebody would come here.
I expect that's why George is keeping you such a long time. Brian, my young man, the well-known painter, only nobody has ever heard of him, he's smoking a pipe with George in the library and asking for his niece's hand.
Well,
Isn't it exciting? You're really lucky, Mr. Pym. I mean, I'm being told so soon. Even Olivia doesn't know yet.
oh, yes, yes, I congratulate you, Miss Martin. Perhaps it would be better.
Mr. Marden is out at the moment, sir.
Oh,
Oh, I didn't see you, Miss Dinah.
Out? Oh, dear, dear.
it's all right, Anne. I'm looking after Mr. Pym.
Very well, miss.
Out. Well, I'd better go.
That's me. They can't discuss me in the library without breaking down. So they're walking up and down outside and slashing about at the thistles in order to conceal their emotion, you know. I expect Brian.
Miss Martin, Yes, I think. Miss Martin, I had better go now and return a little later. I have a telegram which I want to send, and perhaps by the time I come back, your uncle will be able
How
to.
disappointing of you when we were getting along so nicely. And it was just about to be your turn to tell me something about yourself.
I really have nothing to tell, Miss Martin. I have a letter of introduction to your uncle, who in turn will give me, I hope, a letter to a certain distinguished man whom it is necessary for me to meet. That is all. Yeah, and now, Miss Martin, I really think I'd better be going.
Oh, I'll start you on your way to the post office.
With you. Now that's really very kind of you.
No, it isn't.
Oh, but it is. You're a very kind little girl.
I want to know if you're married
Oh, no, I'm not married.
and all that sort of thing. You've got heaps to tell me, Mr. Pym. Have you got your hat? Oh, yes, that's right. Well, oh, here's Brian. Brian, this is Mr. Pym, Mr. Caraway Pym. He's been telling me all about himself.
I never said a word. I never opened my mouth.
It's so interesting. He's just going to send a telegram and then he's coming back again. Mr. Pym, this is Brian, you know.
How do you do?
How do you do, sir?
You won't mind going to the post office by yourself now, will you? Because you see, Brian and I,
Miss Steiner and Mr. Brian, I've only come into your lives for a moment. It is probable that I should now pass out of them forever. But perhaps you will permit an old man.
I'm not so old.
Oh, not old. Well, shall we say a middle-aged man? A middle-aged man to wish you both every happiness in the years that you have before you. Goodbye. Goodbye, and thank you so much. Oh, I know my way. Turn to the left and down the hill. Turn to the left and down the hill.
Brian, he'll get lost if he goes that way.
Round to the left, sir. Yes, that's right. Rum old bird. Who is he?
Darling, you haven't kissed me yet.
Oh, I say I oughtn't to, but then one never ought to do the nice things.
Oughtn't you?
Well, we said we'd be good until we told your uncle and aunt all about it. You see, being a guest in their
But
house.
darling child, what have you been doing all this morning except telling George?
Oh, trying to tell George.
Yes, of course, there's a difference.
I think he guessed there was something up and he took me down to see the pigs. He said he had to see the pigs at once. I didn't know why, an appointment perhaps, and we talked about pigs all the way. And I couldn't say, talking about pigs, I want to marry your niece.
Oh, of course you couldn't.
Oh, no! Well, you see how it was. And then when we'd finished talking about pigs, we started talking to the pigs.
Oh, how is Arnold?
Arnold. Oh, yes. That's the little black and white one. He's very jolly, I believe, but naturally I wasn't thinking about him much. I was wondering how to begin. And then Lumsden came up and wanted to talk pig food, and the atmosphere grew less and less romantic, and I gradually drifted away.
Oh, poor darling. Well, we shall have to approach him through Olivia.
But I always wanted to tell her first. She's so much easier. Only you wouldn't let me.
That's your fault, Brian. You would tell Olivia that she ought to have orange and black curtains in here.
But she wants orange and black curtains in here.
Yes. But George says he's not going to have any futuristic nonsense in an honest English country house, which has been good enough for his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather and all the rest of them. So there's a sort of strained feeling between Olivia and George just now. And if Olivia were to sort of recommend you, well, it wouldn't do you much good.
I see. Of course I know what you want, Dinah.
What do I want?
You want a secret engagement.
Oh.
And notes left under doormats.
Oh.
And meetings by the withered thorn.
Ooh.
When all the household is asleep.
Oh.
I know you.
Oh, but this is so much fun. I love meeting people by withered thorns.
Well, I'm not going to have it.
George, look at us being so husbandy.
You babe, I adore you. You know, you're rather throwing yourself away on me. Do you mind?
Not a bit.
We shall never be rich. But we shall have lots of fun and meet interesting people and feel that we're doing something worth doing and not getting paid nearly enough for it. And we can curse the Academy together in the British public, and oh, it's an exciting life.
I shall love it.
I'll make you love it. You shan't be sorry, Dinah.
You shan't be sorry either, Brian.
Oh, I know I shan't. What will Olivia think about it? Will she be surprised?
Olivia? Oh, she's never surprised. She always seems to have thought about things half an hour before they happen. George just begins to get hold of them about half an hour after they've happened. After all, there's no reason why George shouldn't like you, darling.
I'm not his sort, really.
You're more Olivia's sort. Well, we'll tell Olivia this morning.
What are you going to tell Olivia this morning?
Olivia, darling!
Oh, well, I think I can guess.
Say you understand, Mrs. Martin.
Mrs. Martin, I am afraid, is a very dense person, Brian. But I think if you asked Olivia if she understood.
Oh, bless you, Olivia. I knew you'd be on our side.
Of course she would.
Well, I don't know if it's usual to kiss an aunt-in-law, Brian, but Dinah is such a very special sort of niece that,
I say you are in luck today, Brian.
And how many people have been told the good news?
Except Mr. Nobody yet, except Mr. Pym.
Oh, does he?
Who's Mr. Pym?
Oh, he just happened. I say, are those the curtains? Then you're going to have them after all.
After all, what? But I decided on them long ago. You haven't told George yet?
I began to, but I never got any further than, there's just,
George would talk about pigs all the time.
Well, I suppose you want me to help you.
Oh, I do, darling.
It would be awfully decent of you. Of course, I'm not quite his sort, really.
You're my sort.
But I don't think he objects to me, and...
Hello? Hello. What's all this about a Mr. Pym? Who is he? Where is he? I had a most important business with Lumsden, and the girl comes down and cackles about a Mr. Pym or Ping or something. Now, where did I put his card? Ah, Caraway Pym. Never heard of him in my life.
He said he had a letter of introduction, Uncle George.
Oh, you saw him, did you? Yes, that reminds me, there was a letter.
He had to send a telegram. He's coming back.
Pass me the scissors, Brian.
These?
Oh, thank you.
Friend of Brimers. Glad to oblige him. Yes, I know the man he wants. Coming back, you say, Dinah? Then I'll be going back too. Send him down to the farm, Olivia, when he comes. Hello? What happened to you?
Oh, don't go, George. There's something we want to talk about.
Hello? What's this?
Shall I?
Yes.
I've been wanting to tell you all this morning, sir, only I didn't seem to have an opportunity of getting it out.
Well, what is it?
I want to marry Dinah, sir.
Oh, you want to marry Dinah? God bless my soul.
You say you like the idea, Uncle George?
Like the idea? Have you heard of this nonsense, Olivia?
They've just this moment told me, George, I think they would be happy together.
And what do you propose to be happy together on?
Well, of course, I know it doesn't amount to much at present, but we shan't starve.
Brian got £50 for a picture last March.
Oh, how many pictures have you sold since?
Well, none, but
None. Well, I don't wonder. Who the devil is going to buy pictures with triangular clouds and square sheep, hmm? Nowadays, they call that art nowadays. Good God, man. Go outside and look at the clouds.
If he draws round clouds in future, George, will you let him marry Dinah?
What? 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 Yes, of course. You would be on his side, all this futuristic nonsense. I'm just taking these clouds as an example. I suppose I can see as well as any man in the county, and I say that clouds are not triangular.
well, after all, sir, at my age, one is naturally experimenting in trying to find one's well, it sounds priggish, but one's medium of expression. I shall find out what I want to do directly, but I think I shall always be able to earn enough to live on. Well, I have for the last 3 years.
I see. And now you want to experiment with a wife.
Well, yes. No.
Yes, you do.
Oh, yes.
And you propose experimenting with my niece.
Well, of course, if you...
You could help the experiment, darling, by giving Dinah a good allowance until she's 21.
Help the experiment. I don't want to help the experiment.
Oh, I thought you did.
You know, you will talk as if I was made of money. What with taxes always going up and rents always going down, it's as much as we can do to rub along as we are, without making allowances to everybody who thinks she wants to get married. And that's thanks to you, my friend.
To me?
You never told me, darling. What's Brian been doing?
He hasn't been doing anything.
He's one of your socialists who go turning the country upside down.
But even socialists must get married sometimes.
I don't see any necessity for that.
But you'd have nobody to damn after dinner, darling, if they all died out.
Really, sir, I don't see what my politics and my art have got to do with it. I'm perfectly ready not to talk about either when I'm in your house, and as Dinah doesn't seem to object to them.
I should think she doesn't.
Oh, you can get round the women, I dare say.
Well, it's Dinah I want to marry and live with. So what it really comes to is that you don't think I can support a wife.
Well, if you're going to do it by selling pictures, I don't think you can.
All right, tell me how much you want me to earn in a year, and I'll earn it.
It isn't merely a question of money. I just mentioned that as one thing, one of the important things. Now, in addition to that, I think you are both too young to marry. I don't think you know your own minds, and I am not at all persuaded that with what I venture to call your outrageous tastes, you and my niece will live happily together. Just because you think she loves you, Dinah may persuade you now that she agrees with all you say and do, but she has been properly brought up in an honest English country household. And she well, in short, I cannot at all approve of any engagement between you. Olivier, if this Mr. Pym comes, I shall be down at the farm, and you might send him along to me there.
Is there any reason why I shouldn't marry a girl who has been properly brought up?
I think you know my views, Strange.
George, wait a moment, dear. We can't leave it like this.
I have said all I want to say on the subject.
Yes, darling, but I haven't begun to say all that I want to say on the subject.
Ah, well, of course, if you have anything to say, Lily, I will listen to it, but I don't know that this is quite the time, or that that you have chosen quite the occupation to endear your views to me.
I may as well tell you, Uncle George, that I have got a good deal to say too.
Yes, darling, I can guess what you're going to say, Dinah, and I think you had better keep it for the moment.
Yes, Aunt Olivia.
Brian, you might take her outside for a walk. I expect you have plenty to talk about.
Now, mind, Strange. No love-making. I put you on your honor about that.
I'll do my best to avoid it, sir.
May I take his arm if we go up a hill?
Well, I'm sure you'll know how to behave. Both of you.
Come on then, Dinah.
Righto.
And if you see any clouds, Strange, take a look at them. Triangular clouds, I never heard of such nonsense. Futuristic rubbish. Well, Olivia,
Well, George.
now what are you doing?
Making curtains, George.
Oh.
Won't they be rather sweet? Oh, but I forgot you don't like them.
No, I don't like them, and what is more, I don't mean to have them in my house. As I told you yesterday, this is the house of a simple country gentleman, and I don't want any of these newfangled ideas in it.
Is marrying for love a newfangled idea?
Now, we shall come to that directly. None of you women can keep to the point. What I'm saying now is that the house of my fathers and my forefathers is good enough for me.
Do you know, George, I can hear one of your ancestors saying that to his wife in their smelly old cave when the newfangled idea of building houses was first suggested. The cave of my forefathers is good enough.
All right, that's ridiculous. Now, naturally, we must have progress, but that's just the point. I don't call that sort of thing progress. It's retrogression.
Well, anyhow, it's pretty.
Well, there I disagree with you. And I must say once more that I will not have them hanging in my house.
Very well, George.
Now, that being so, I don't see the necessity of going on with them.
Well, I must do something with them now I've got the material. I thought perhaps I could sell them when they're finished, as we're so poor.
What do you mean, so poor?
Well, you said just now that you couldn't give Dinah an allowance because rents had gone down.
Confound it, Olivia, keep to the point. We'll talk about Dinah's affairs directly. We were discussing our own affairs at the moment.
But what is there to discuss, dear?
Well, those ridiculous things.
Oh, but we've finished that. You've said you wouldn't have them hanging in your house, and I've said, very well, George. Well, now we can go on to Dinah and Brian.
All right, but put the beastly things away.
Oh, very well, George.
Now, that's better. Now look here, Olivia, old girl. You've been a jolly good wife to me. And we don't often have rows. And if I've been rude to you about this, lost my temper a bit, perhaps what? I'll say I'm sorry. May I have a kiss?
George, darling.
Mm.
Do you love me
You know I do, old girl.
as much as Brian loves Dinah?
I've said all I want to say about that.
Oh, but there must be lots you want to say and perhaps don't like to. Oh, do tell me, darling.
What it comes to is this. I consider that Dinah is too young to choose a husband for herself, and that Strange is not the husband I should choose for her.
Oh, you were calling him Brian yesterday.
Well, yesterday I regarded him as a boy. Now he wants me to look upon him as a man.
He's 24.
Yes, and Dinah's 19. Ridiculous.
If he'd been a conservative and thought that clouds were round, I suppose he'd have seemed older somehow.
Now, that's a different point altogether. This has nothing to do with age.
Oh, I thought it had.
What I'm objecting to is these ridiculously early marriages before either party knows its own mind, much less the mind of the other party. Such marriages invariably lead to unhappiness.
Oh, of course. My first marriage wasn't a happy one.
As you know, Olivia, I dislike speaking about your first marriage at all, and I had no intention of bringing it up now, but since you mentioned it, well, there's a case in point.
When I was 18, I was in love.
What?
Or perhaps I only thought I was. And I don't know if I should have been happy or not if I'd married him, but my father made me marry Mr. Jacob Telworthy. And when things were too hot for him in England, too hot for him, I think that was the expression we used in those days. Well, then we went to Australia, and I left him there. And the only happy moment I had in all my married life was on the morning when I saw in the papers that he was dead.
Yes, yes, my dear, I know, I know. You must have had a terrible time. I can hardly bear to think about it. My only hope is that I have made up to you for it in some degree. But I don't see what bearing it has upon Dinah's case.
Oh, none, except that my father liked Jacob's political opinions and his views on art. I expect that was why he chose him for me.
You seem to think that I wish to choose a husband for Dinah. I don't at all. Let her choose whom she likes as long as he can support her, and there's a chance of their being happy together. Now, with regard to this fellow,
Oh, you mean Brian?
well, he's got no money. He's been brought up in quite a different way from Dinah. Dinah may be prepared to believe that all cows are blue and that the waves are square, but she won't go on believing it forever.
Well, neither will Brian.
Well, that's what I keep telling him, only you won't see it. Just as I keep telling you about those ridiculous curtains. Now, it seems to me that I am the only person in the house with any eyesight left.
Oh, perhaps you are, darling, but you must let us find out our own mistakes for ourselves.
Yeah.
At any rate, Brian is a gentleman. He loves Dinah. Dinah loves him. He's earning enough to support himself, and you are earning enough to support Dinah.
What?
I think it's worth risking, George.
I can only say that the whole question demands much more anxious thought than you seem to have given it. You say that he's a gentleman. He knows how to behave, I admit, but if his morals are as topsy-turvy as his tastes and politics, as I've no doubt they are, then in short, I do not approve of Brian Strange as a husband for my niece and ward.
Oh, you are a curious mixture, George. You were so very unconventional when you married me, and you're so very conventional when Brian wants to marry Dinah. George Marden to marry the widow of a convict?
Convict? What do you mean?
Jacob Telworthy, convict? I forget his number. Surely I told you all this, dear, when we got engaged.
Never.
Oh, but I told you how he carelessly put the wrong signature to a cheque for £1,000 in England, how he made a little mistake about two or three companies he'd promoted in Australia, and
Yes, but you never told me that he'd been, well, convicted.
oh, what difference does it make?
My dear Olivia, if you can't see that,
Oh, a convict. Oh, you see, we needn't be too particular about our niece, need we?
I think we had better leave your first husband out of the conversation altogether. I never wish to refer to him. I never wish to hear about him again. I certainly had not realized that he actually was convicted for his...
Mistakes.
Well, we needn't go into that. And as for this other matter, I don't for a moment take it seriously. Dinah is an exceptionally pretty girl and young. Strange is a good-looking boy. Now, if they're attracted to each other, it's a mere outward attraction, which I am convinced will not lead to any lasting happiness. Now, that must be regarded as my last word on the matter, Olivia. Now, if this Mr. What's-his-name comes, I shall be down to the farm.
Finished?
Oh, no, I've got all these rings to put on.
I meant talking to George.
We walked about outside,
Until we heard him not talking to you anymore.
and we didn't kiss each other once.
Hmm.
Ah,
Brian was very George-like. He wouldn't even let me tickle the back of his neck. Darling, being George-like is a very nice thing to be. I mean, a nice thing for other people to be. I mean, oh, you know what I mean. But say that he's going to be decent about it.
But of course he is, Dinah.
you mean he'll let me come here as
As my young man.
Oh, I think so.
Olivia, you're a wonder. Brian, have you really talked him round?
Well, I haven't said anything yet.
Oh,
But I dare say I shall think of something.
oh my lord.
oh.
After all, Dinah, I'm going back to London tomorrow.
Oh, no, no.
Now, Dinah, you can be good for one more day, and then when Brian isn't here, we'll see what we can do.
Yes, but I don't want him to go back tomorrow.
It must. Hard work before me. Earn thousands a year. Paint the mayor and corporate of Pudsey, life size, including chains of office. Paint slice of haddock on plate. Copy Landseer for old gentlemen in Bayswater. Design anti-macassar for middle-aged sofa in Streatham. Oh yes, earn a living for you, Dinah.
Oh, Brian, you're heavenly. What fun we shall have when we're married.
Sir Brian Strange, R.A., if you please, Miss Marden. Sir Brian Strange, R.A., writes, your Sanogene has proved a most excellent tonic. After completing the third acre of my Academy picture, The Mayor and Corporation of Pudsey, I was completely exhausted. But one bottle of Sanogene revived me, and I finished the remaining 7 acres at a single sitting.
Brian, find my scissors for me.
Scissors? Sir Brian Strange, R.A., looks for scissors. Once more, we must record an unqualified success for the eminent academician, your scissors.
Thank you so much.
Come on, Brian, let's get out. I feel open-airy.
Oh, don't be late for lunch. There's good people. Lady Marden is coming.
Aunt Olivia, help! That means a clean pinafore, Brian. You'll jolly well have to brush your hair.
I suppose there's no time now to go up to London and get it cut.
Mr. Pym.
Mr. Pym, here we are again. You can't get rid of us so easily, you see.
Dear Miss Marden,
How do you do, Mr. Pym? I can't get up, but do come and sit down. My husband will be here in a minute, and send somebody down to the farm.
I think I heard the master in the library, madam.
Oh, will you tell him then?
Yes, madam.
You'll stay to lunch, of course, Mr. Pym.
Oh, do.
it's very kind of you, Mrs. Marden, but
Oh, you simply must, Mr. Pym. You haven't told us half enough about yourself yet. I want to hear all about your early life.
Dinah.
oh, we are almost, I must say, old friends, Mrs. Marden.
Of course we are. He knows Brian too. There's more in Mr. Pym than you think. You will stay for lunch, won't you?
It's very kind of you to ask me, Mrs. Marden, but I am lunching with the Trevors.
Oh, well, you must come to lunch another day.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
The reason why we like Mr. Pym so much is that he was the first person to congratulate us. I feel that he is going to have a great influence on our lives.
I, so to speak, stumbled on the engagement this morning, and
I see. Children, you must go and tidy yourselves up now. Run along.
Sir Brian and Lady Strange never run, they walk. Madam?
Au revoir, Mr. Pym. We shall meet again.
Oh, you must forgive them, Mr. Pym. They're such children. And naturally, they're rather excited just now.
Oh, naturally, naturally.
Of course, you won't say anything about their engagement. We only heard about it 5 minutes ago, and, well, nothing has been settled yet.
Of course, of course.
Ah, Pym, Mr. Pym, we meet at last. Sorry to have kept you waiting before. How are you? How are you?
The apology should come from me, Mr. Martin, for having.
Not at all. Very glad to meet you now. Any friend of Brimer's, eh? Now, you want a letter to this man Fanshawe? Hmm?
Oh, shall I be in your way at all?
Oh, no, 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 please don't.
No, no, no. It's just a question of a letter. Now, Fanshawe will put you in the way of seeing all that you want to see. He's a very old friend of mine. You'll stay to lunch, of course. Hmm?
It's very kind of you, but I'm lunching with the Trevors.
Ah, well, they'll look after you. Good chap, Trevor.
Oh, very good, very good. You see, Mrs. Martin, I have only recently arrived from Australia after traveling about the world for some years, and I'm rather out of touch with my fellow workers in London.
I see. You've been in Australia, Mr. Pym?
Oh, yes,
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, Mr. Pym. Shan't be a moment.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you. Oh, yes, I've been in Australia more than once in the last few years.
Really? I used to live at Sydney many years ago. Do you know Sydney at all?
Oh, yes, I was.
Perhaps I'd better mention that you are a friend of the Trevors. Hmm?
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, indeed, yes. I spent several months in Sydney a few years ago.
How curious. I wonder if we have any friends in common there.
Extremely unlikely, I should think. Sydney's a very big place. Hmm?
True, true. But the world's a very small place, Mr. Martin. I had a remarkable instance of that coming over on the boat the last time.
Ah, hmm.
Yes, there was a man I used to employ in Sydney some years ago. Oh, a bad fellow, I'm afraid, Mrs. Martin, who had been in prison for some kind of fraudulent company promoting and had taken to drink and so on.
Yes, yes, I understand.
Drinking himself to death, I should have said. I gave him at the most another year to live. Yet to my amazement, the first person I saw as I stepped on board the boat that brought me to England last week was this fellow. There was no mistaking him. I spoke to him, in fact. We recognized each other.
Really?
He was traveling steerage, so we didn't meet again on board. And as it happened at Marseille, this poor fellow, now what was his name? A very unusual one. Began with a T, I think.
Yes, Mr. Pym, yes.
Nonsense. Yeah.
I've got it. Tilworthy.
Tellworthy?
Good God.
Unusual name, is it not? Not a name you could forget when once you'd heard it.
No, it is not a name you could forget when once you'd heard it.
Quite so, Mr. Pym. Quite a remarkable name. Most odd story altogether. Well, well, here's your letter. And if you're sure you won't stay to lunch.
No, thank you. You see, I'm lunching with.
Yes, with the Trevors, yes, you told me. Yes. I'll just see you on your way, my dear.
Oh, goodbye, Mr. Pym.
Goodbye, goodbye.
This way. Quicker for you.
Oh,
Good God. Tellworthy? Is it possible?
Lady Martin.
We're having an intermission.
Curtain.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Curtain Pullers Union is getting lax.
All right. Let's take. I'd say 6 or 7 minutes, perhaps. All right.
okay.
All righty then. Well, as with the live stream, we don't we can't sort of pause it and do it. We'll just keep going. I'm happy to talk about instant Shakespeare or anything, or this. This is so much fun. I'm really can't wait to see what comes next. It's such a I don't know. It seems like this sort of familiar sorts of things of people being so frightened of the socialists all the time when they never really had a chance in this country. But so it's
You know what this reminds me of, the old screwball comedies.
Mhm.
It's just it's delightful characters, and everybody misunderstanding things, and it's just
And everybody absolutely hell-bent on their own agendas.
yes, absolutely.
Full of charm and politeness and not heeding or considering anybody else's point of view. Just I mean, Leia is doing that character, that type that pops up on all these things. It's the sort of the engine that causes all the trouble, the free spirit. I love it. And the guy I'm playing just doesn't hear anything.
Yes, no, 'cause yeah, he doesn't,
Excuse me.
and he's used to like just whatever I say goes, So, but it's it is, people that are the same, and that's the great thing about dramas. Even though there's sorts of specific things, and there's more of the also the sense of class that we have in England that we're less familiar with here, but it's just the same sort of like, ooh, the getting the, well, I mean, in the days when it sort of mattered to get the approval of the older generation, but
When did these
so financially important, like, yeah, I mean, what she's asking really makes a lot of sense, to give an allowance, and that will really help them through.
Yeah.
When did things like this stop being written? This kind of, because we do a lot of these, as you say, Paula. When did
Well,
these stop?
but if you think about it, I mean, all those movies with Myrna Loy and Cary Grant and
Yeah.
that group, they're the same kind of thing,
Hmm.
just a little later.
Mm.
But it's everybody misunderstanding everybody else, and everybody with different agendas, and always somebody like my character who is sort of a little eccentric, but able to see through all the nonsense.
And handles it all.
Yeah.
So if you'd remind me, what movie should I look at? I picture the faces. I can't think of.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
I certainly know
Bringing
Arsenic.
Up Baby.
Oh yeah,
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 that's
that's a great
one.
one.
There's bunches of them, which
Oh,
of course I
I
can't
saw
think
that
of
one.
now.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also, I think it's the idea of that the people are the interesting things, these eccentric characters sort of bouncing off each other in their
Yeah,
ways, which also, I mean, just recently I'd seen like Mame on the film, and that
Yeah.
kind of a character driven thing, or like His Girl Friday also, I think, is
Oh, yes. Yes.
example.
but in
That's
England,
wonderful.
what was it in the 50s or so when I can't think of his name, the guy who wrote The Entertainer, John Osborne?
Right.
Oh,
When
oh.
those kinds of things started happening, did somebody still write them? Do they still happen after the 60s, after the Beatles,
Well, they're a little different, I think. Um,
I mean, I think in some ways it's sort of, we've had some things in terms of like the continuation in terms of like quirky British comedies more on film, maybe like, I mean, A Fish Called Wanda, I would think of is kind of
Okay,
tradition.
yeah.
sure,
Or
sure.
oh, now I can't think of the name of it. Shoot. I'll think of it at 3 o'clock in the morning. I won't
Call
call
us.
you, I promise.
Well, I think we'd better continue. Sue has somewhere to go later on, so we should press on, I think.
I'm good. I'll be
Okay.
fine until then.
All right.
Do
One of
we
the
have
advantages of
everyone
this
back?
play is that it takes place all in the same set, which makes it more economical to do. That and a small cast.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's do.
Act two, lunch is over and coffee is has been served on the terrace. Conversation drags on to the satisfaction of Lady Marden, but nobody else. So go from there.
We'll have coffee on the terrace, Anne.
Very good, madam.
We'll have coffee on the terrace, Aunt Julia.
I know Aunt Julia likes a little music.
No. No. Don't do it.
Your aunt does not like it, dear.
My cigarette case.
Have you found it?
Found what?
That was just for their benefit. I'd said I'd help you find it. It is your cigarette case we're looking for, isn't it?
Oh, yes, have one.
No, thank you, darling. Aunt Julia thinks it's unladylike. Have you seen her beagling?
No, is that very ladylike?
Very. I say, what has happened, do you think?
Everything. I love you and you love me.
Silly. I meant between George and Olivia. Didn't you notice them at lunch?
I noticed that you seem to be doing most of the talking, but then I've noticed that before sometimes. Do you think Olivia and your uncle have quarreled because of us?
Oh, of course not. George may think he has quarrelled, but I'm quite sure Olivia hasn't. No, I believe Mr. Pym's at the bottom of it. He's brought some terribly sad news about George's investments. The old home will have to be sold up.
Good. Then your uncle won't mind your marrying me.
Yes, darling. But you must be more dramatic about it than that. George, you must say, with tears in your eyes, I cannot pay off the whole of the mortgage for you. I have only 2.09, but at least let me take your niece off your hands. Then George will thump you on the back and say gruffly, "You're a good fellow, Brian, a damn good fellow." And he'll blow his nose very loudly and say, "Confound this cigarette, it won't draw properly."
Dinah, you're a heavenly idiot, and you've simply got to marry me, uncles or no uncles.
Hush. It will have to be uncles, I'm afraid, because you see, I'm his ward, and I can get sent to Chancery or Coventry or somewhere beastly if I marry without his consent. Haven't you got anybody who objects to your marrying me?
Nobody, thank heaven.
Well, that's rather disappointing of you. I saw myself fascinating your aged father at the same time you were fascinating George. I should have done it much better than you. As a George fascinator, you aren't very successful, sweetheart.
What am I like as a Dinah fascinator?
+6, darling.
Then I'll stick to that and leave George to Olivia.
I expect she'll manage him all right. I have great faith in Olivia. But you'll marry me anyhow, won't you, Brian?
I will.
Even if we have to wait till I'm 21?
Even if we have to wait till you're 51.
Oh, darling.
I say don't do that.
Why not?
Well, I promised I wouldn't kiss you.
Oh, well, you might just send me a kiss. You can look the other way as if you didn't know I was here.
Like this?
That was a lovely one. Now here's one coming for you.
Madam, I thank you.
Your servant, Mr. Strange.
Aunt Julia wants to see the pigs, dear. I wish you'd take her down. I'm rather tired and your uncle has some business to attend to.
I've always said you don't take enough exercise, Olivia. Look at me, 65 and proud of it.
Yes, Aunt Julia, you're wonderful.
How old would Olivia be if she took exercise?
Don't fool without asking silly questions, Dinah. Your aunt hasn't much time.
May I come too, Lady Marden?
Well, a little exercise wouldn't do you any harm, Mr. Strange. You're an artist, aren't you?
Well, I try to paint.
He sold a picture last March for,
Yes, yes, never mind that now.
Yes, an unhealthy life.
Hmm.
Well, come along.
Really, Olivia, you've got something more important, more vital to us than curtains to discuss now that we are alone at last.
Well, I wasn't going to discuss them, dear.
Of course, I'm always glad to see Aunt Julie in my house, but I wish she hadn't chosen this of all days to come to lunch.
It wasn't Aunt Julia's fault. It was really Mr. Pym who chose the wrong day.
Good heavens. Is it true?
About Jacob Telworthy?
You told me he was dead. You always said that he was dead.
Well, I always thought that he was dead. He was as dead as anybody could be. All the papers said he was dead.
Oh, the papers. Blah.
The Times said he was dead. There was a paragraph about him. Apparently, even his death was fraudulent.
Yes, yes, I'm not blaming you, Olivia, but what are we going to do? That's the question. What are we going to do? My God, it's horrible. You've never been married to me at all. You don't seem to understand.
Well, it is a little difficult to realize. You see, it doesn't seem to have made any difference to our happiness.
No, that's what's so terrible. I mean, well, of course we were quite innocent in the matter, but at the same time, nothing can get over the fact that we had no right to be happy.
Would you rather we'd been miserable?
You're Telworthy's wife. That's what you don't seem to understand. You're Telworthy's wife. You forgive me, Olivia, but it's the horrible truth. You committed bigamy when you married me. Bigamy!
Oh, it is an ugly word, isn't it?
Yes, but you don't understand. Look here, Olivia, old girl, the whole thing is nonsense, eh? I mean, it isn't your husband. It's some other Telworthy the fellow met. That's right, isn't it? Some other shady swindler who turned up on the boat, eh? This sort of thing doesn't happen to people like us, committing bigamy and all that. Some other fellow.
I knew all the shady swindlers in Sydney. They came to dinner. There were no others called Telworthy.
Then what are we going to do?
You sent Mr. Pym away so quickly, he might have told us things. Telworthy's plans, where he is now. Oh, you hurried him away so quick.
Yes, I've sent a note around to ask him to come back. My one idea at the moment was to get him out of the house, to hush things up.
Well, you can't hush up two husbands.
You can't. Everyone will know. Everybody.
Oh, the children, Aunt Julia. Oh, they may as well know now as later. Oh, Mr. Pym must, of course.
I do not propose to discuss my private affairs with Mr. Pym.
But he's mixed up in them. Rather, isn't he? I mean, if you're going to ask him questions.
I only propose to ask him one question. I shall ask him if he's absolutely certain of this fellow's name. Now, I can do that quite easily without letting him know the reason for my inquiry.
Oh, you couldn't make a mistake about a name like Telworthy. But he might tell us something about Telworthy's plans. Perhaps he's going back to Australia at once. Perhaps he thinks I'm dead too. Perhaps, oh, there are so many things I want to know.
Yes, dear, it would be interesting to... That is, one naturally wants to know these things, but of course, it doesn't make any real difference.
No
Lydia.
difference.
That is to say, you're as much his wife if he's in Australia as you are if he's in England.
I am not his wife at all. Jacob Telworthy may be alive, but I am not his wife. I ceased to be his wife when I became yours.
You never were my wife. That's the terrible part of it. Our union, you make me say it, Olivier, has been unhallowed by the church, unhallowed even by the law. Legally, we have been living in. Well, the point is, how does the law stand? I imagine that Telworthy could get a divorce. Oh, God, seems impossible things like this are happening to us.
A divorce?
I imagine so.
Oh, but then We could really get married, and we shouldn't be living in whatever we were living in before.
I cannot understand you, Olivia. You talk about it so calmly, as if there was nothing blameworthy in being divorced.
Yes,
As
but
if there was nothing unusual in my marrying a divorced woman.
yes,
As if there was nothing wrong in our having lived together for years without having been married.
well, what seems wrong to me is that I lived for 5 years with a bad man whom I hated. What seems right to me is that I lived for 5 years with a good man whom I love.
Yes, yes, my dear, I know. But right and wrong don't settle themselves as easily as that. We've been living together when you were Telworthy's wife. That's wrong.
Do you mean wicked?
Well, no doubt the court would consider that we acted in perfect innocence.
What court?
Well, you see, my dear, these things have to be done legally, of course. I believe that the proper method is a nullity suit, declaring our marriage null and well, void. It would, so to speak, wipe out these years of
Wickedness?
irregular union, and then
Then I could go back to Jacob. Do you really mean that, George?
well, dear, you see, that's how things are. One cannot get away from.
What you feel is that Telworthy has the greater claim? You are prepared to make way for him?
Both the church and the law would say that I had no claim at all, I'm afraid. I suppose I haven't.
I see. Well, thank you for making it so clear, George.
Well, of course, whether or not you go back to Telworthy is another matter altogether. That would naturally be for you to decide.
Well, for me and Jacko to decide.
Jacko?
I used to call my first husband, I mean my only husband, Jacko. I don't like the name of Jacob, and Jacko seemed to suit him somehow. He had very long arms. Poor Jacko.
You don't seem to realize that this is not a joke, Olivia.
It may not be a joke, but it is funny, isn't it?
I must say, I don't see anything funny in a tragedy that's wrecked 2 lives.
Oh, but Jacko's life isn't wrecked. It has just been miraculously restored to him, and a wife too. There's nothing tragic for Jacko in it.
I was referring to our 2 lives, yours and mine.
Yours, George? Your life isn't wrecked. The court will absolve you of all blame. Your friends will sympathize with you and tell you that I was a designing woman who deliberately took you in. Oh, your Aunt Julia.
But stop it! What do you mean? Have you no heart? Do you think I want to lose you, Olivia? Do you think I want my home broken up like this? Haven't you been happy with me these last 5 years?
Oh, very happy.
Well, then how can you talk like that?
But you want to send me away.
Now, there you go again. I don't want to. I have hardly had time to realize just what it will mean to me when you go. The fact is, I simply daren't realize it. I daren't think about it.
Try thinking about it, George.
And you talk as if I wanted to send you away.
Try thinking about it, George.
You don't seem to understand. I'm not sending you away. You simply aren't mine to keep.
But whose am I?
Your husband's, Telworthy's.
If I belong to anybody but myself, I think I belong to you.
Not in the eyes of the law, not in the eyes of the church, not even in the eyes of
The county?
I was going to say heaven.
Oh.
Oh, that this should happen to us.
Well, I do hope Jacko will like these curtains.
What? You... Olivia! Olivia, have you no heart?
Ought you to talk like that to another man's wife?
Confound it, is this just a joke to you?
Oh, you must forgive me, George. I am a little overexcited at the thought of returning to Jacob.
Do you want to return to him?
One wants to do what is right in the eyes of heaven.
Seeing what sort of a man he is, I have no doubt that you could get a separation, supposing that he didn't divorce you. I don't know what is best. I must consult my solicitor. The whole position has been sprung on us, and I don't know. I don't know. I can't take it all in.
Wouldn't you like to consult your Aunt Julia, too? She could tell you what what heaven really thought about it.
Yes, Aunt Julia has plenty of common sense. You're quite right, Olivia. This isn't a thing we can keep from the family.
Oh, do I still call her Aunt Julia?
What? What? Well, what is it?
Mr. Pym says he will come down at once, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
George, Mr. Pym has got to know.
I don't see the necessity.
Not even for me? When a woman suddenly hears that her long-lost husband is restored to her, don't you think she wants to ask questions? Where is he living? And how is he looking? And
Of course, if you're interested in those things.
well, how can I help being? Don't be so silly, George. We must know what Jacko's...
I wish you wouldn't call him by that ridiculous name.
My husband?
Yes, well, your husband.
Well, we must know his plans, where we can communicate with him, and so on.
I've no wish to communicate with him.
I'm afraid you'll have to, dear.
I don't see the necessity.
Well, you'll want to apologize to him for living with his wife for so long. And as I belong to him, he ought to be told where he can call for me.
You put it a very peculiar way, but I see your point. Oh, the horrible publicity of it all.
Oh, poor George. Dear, don't think I don't sympathize with you. I understand so exactly what you are feeling. The publicity, oh, it's terrible.
I want to do what's right. You do believe that, don't you?
Of course I do. It's only that, well, we don't quite agree as to what is right and what is wrong.
It isn't a question of agreeing. Right is right, wrong is wrong, all the world over.
But more particularly in Buckinghamshire, I think.
If I only considered myself, I should say, well, let us pack this man Telworthy back to Australia. He would make no claim. He would accept money to go away and say nothing about it. If I consulted simply my own happiness, Olivia, that is what I should say. But when I consult
Mine?
my conscience,
Oh,
then I can't do it. It's wrong.
yes. But George, don't you think I'm worth a little?
Dinah. Well, then I'll write to him and Dinah, where's Aunt Julia?
We've seen the pigs, and now she's discussing the art of Lancia with Brian. I just came to ask.
Dinah dear, bring Aunt Julia here, and Brian too. We have things we want to talk about with you all.
Righto.
Olivia.
What fun.
Olivia, you don't seriously suggest that we should discuss these things with a child like Dinah and a young man like Strange, a mere acquaintance?
Dinah will have to know. I'm very fond of her, George. You can't send me away without telling Dinah. And Brian is my friend. You have your solicitor and your aunt and your conscience to consult. Mayn't I even have Brian?
I should have thought that your husband
Oh,
would.
yes, but we don't know where Jacko is.
I was not referring to Tellworthy.
Well, then,
Oh, of course, you, naturally.
uh,
Oh, this is horrible.
um, George and I have had some rather bad news, Aunt Julia. We wanted your advice. Where will you sit?
Thank you, Olivia. I can sit down by myself.
You sit there, darling.
Well, what is it?
Um,
Money, I suppose. Nobody's safe nowadays.
Olivia.
we've just heard that my first husband is still alive.
Tellworthy?
Good Lord!
George!
And only this morning I was saying that nothing ever happened in this house. Darling, I don't mean that. Darling one.
What does this mean, George? I leave for 10 minutes, barely 10 minutes, to go and look at the pigs. And when I come back, you tell me that Olivia is a bigamist.
I say, if this is a row, I'm on your side.
Well, George?
I'm afraid it's true, Aunt Julia. We heard the news just before lunch, just before you came. We've only this moment had an opportunity of talking about it, of wondering what to do.
What was his name? Tell something.
Jacob Tellworthy.
So he's still alive?
Apparently, there seems to be no doubt about it.
Didn't you see him die? I should always want to see my husband die before I married again. Not that I approve of second marriages. Anyhow, I told you so at the time, George.
And me, Aunt Julia.
Did I? Well, I generally say what I think.
I ought to tell you, Aunt Julia, that no blame attaches to Olivia over this. Of that, I am perfectly satisfied. It's nobody's fault except the.
Except Tellworthy's. He seems to have been rather careless. Well, what are you going to do about it?
That's just it. It's a terrible situation. There's bound to be so much publicity. Not only all this, but Tellworthy's past.
I should have said it was Tellworthy's present which was the trouble. Had he a past as well?
He was a fraudulent company promoter. He went to prison a good deal.
George, you never told me this.
I
don't see why he should want to talk about it.
What's it got to do with Olivia anyhow? It's not her fault.
Oh, no, I dare say it's mine.
You wanted George to ask Aunt Julia what was the right thing to do?
Well, good heavens, what is there to do except the one and only thing? I'm sorry, you don't want me to do...
I do, Brian.
Well, go on, Mr. Strange. What would you do in George's position?
Say to the woman I loved, you're mine, and let this other damned fellow come and take you from me if he can. And he couldn't. How could he? And not if the woman chose me.
Oh, Brian. It is me, isn't it, and not Olivia?
Baby, of course.
I'm afraid, Mr. Strange, your morals are as peculiar as your views on art.
This is not a question of morals or of art. It's a question of love.
Hear, hear.
Isn't that girl's bedtime yet?
Oh, we'll let her sit up a little longer if she's good.
I will be good, Olivia. Only I thought anybody, however important a debate was allowed to say, hear, hear.
Really, Olivia, I really think we could discuss this better if Mr. Strange took Dinah out for a walk. Strange, if you would...
Tell them what you have settled first, George.
Settled? What is there to be settled? It settles itself.
That's just it.
The marriage must be annulled. Is that the word, George?
I presume so.
One solicitor will know all about that, of course.
And when the marriage has been annulled, what then?
Presumably, Olivia will return to her husband.
And that's morality. as expounded by Bishop Landseer.
I don't know what you mean by Bishop Landseer. Morality is acting in accordance with the laws of the land and the laws of the church. Now, I'm quite prepared to believe that your creed embraces neither marriage nor monogamy, but my creed is different.
My creed includes both marriage and monogamy means sticking to the woman you love as long as she wants you.
You suggest that George and Olivia should go on living together as though they have never been legally married. Bless the man, what do you think the county would say?
Does it matter?
Well, if you really want to know, the men would say, God, she's a fine woman. I don't wonder he sticks to her. And the women would say, I can't think what he sees in her to stick to her like that. And they both say, after all, he may be a damn fool, but he can't deny he's a sportsman.
Was it for this sort of thing, Olivia, that you insisted on having Dinah and Mr. Strange in here? To insult me in my own house?
I can't think what young people are coming to nowadays.
I think, dear, you and Brian had better go.
We will go. But I'm going to say just one more thing, Uncle George. Brian and I are going to marry each other. And when we are married, we'll stick to each other, however many of our dead husbands and wives turn up. Come on, Brian.
Upon my word, this is a pleasant discussion.
I think the discussion is over, George. It's only a question of where I shall go while you are bringing your, what sort of suit did you call it?
Nullity suit. I suppose that is the best thing.
It's horrible. The awful publicity. That it should be happening to us. That's what I can't get over.
I don't remember anything of the sort in the Marden family before ever.
Lady Fanny.
Yes, of course, but that was 200 years ago. The standards were quite different then. Besides, it wasn't quite the same anyhow.
No, it wasn't quite the same.
No, we shall all feel it terribly.
If there were any other way. Olivia, what can I do? It is the only way, isn't it? All that fellow said, of course, it sounds very, very well, but as things are, is there anything in marriage or isn't there? You believe that there is, don't you? You aren't one of these socialists? Well, then, can we go on living together when you're another man's wife? It isn't only what people will say, but it is wrong, isn't it? And supposing he doesn't divorce you, are we to go on living together unmarried forever? Olivia, you seem to think that I'm just thinking of the publicity, what people will say. I'm not. That comes in anyway. But what I want to do, what's right, what's best. I don't mean what's best for us, what makes us happiest. I mean what's really best, what's rightest, what anybody else would do in my place. I don't know. It's all so unfair. You're not my wife at all, but I want to do what's right. Olivia, you do understand, don't you?
Oh, so very, very well, George. Oh, I understand just what you are feeling. And oh, I do so wish that you could. Oh, but then it wouldn't be George, not the George I married. or didn't quite marry.
I must say, I think you are both talking a little wildly.
Or didn't quite marry.
Olivia, my darling.
Mr. Pym is here.
Mr. Pym, dear.
Pym. Yes, of course. Mr. Pym. Well, where have you put him?
I want to see Mr. Pym too, George.
Who on earth is Mr. Pym?
Show him in here, Anne.
Yes, madam.
It was Mr. Pym who told us about my husband. He came across with him in the boat and recognized him as the Tellworthy he knew in Australia.
Oh, shall I be in the way?
No, it doesn't matter, does it, Olivia?
Oh, please stay.
Hmm.
Mr. Pym,
Ah, Mr. Pym, very good of you to have come.
Not at all.
The fact is, Pym,
We're so sorry to trouble you, Mr. Pym. Oh, by the way, do you know Lady Marden?
Oh, no, I haven't had the honor.
my aunt, Mr. Pym.
Now do come and sit down, won't you? The fact is, Mr. Pym, you gave us rather a surprise this morning, and well, before we had time to realize what it all meant, you had gone.
A surprise, Mrs. Martin? Dear me, not an unpleasant one, I hope.
Well, rather a surprising one.
Olivia, allow me a moment. Mr. Pym, you mentioned a man called Tellworthy this morning. Now, my wife used to, that is to say, I used to, that is, there are certain
I
reasons.
think we had better be perfectly frank, George.
I am 65 years of age, Mr. Pym, and I can say that I've never had a moment's uneasiness by telling the truth.
I'm afraid I'm rather at sea. Have I left anything unsaid in presenting my credentials to you this morning?
No.
Then this Tellworthy, whom you mentioned, I seem to remember the name.
Yes, Mr. Pym, you told us this morning of a man you had met on the boat, a man who had come down in the world, whom you had known in Sydney, a man called Tellworthy.
Yes, of course. I did say Tellworthy, didn't I? Most curious coincidence, Lady Marden. Poor man, poor man. Let me see. It must have been 10 years ago.
Just a moment, Mr. Pym. You're quite sure that his name was Tellworthy?
Tellworthy. Didn't I say Tellworthy? Yes, that was it, Tellworthy. Poor fellow.
I'm going to be perfectly frank with you, Mr. Pym. I feel quite sure that I can trust you.
Oh, Mrs. Marden.
This man Tellworthy, whom you met, is my husband.
Your husband? Your,
My first husband. His death was announced 6 years ago. I had left him some years before that, but there seems no doubt from your story that he's still alive. His record, the country he comes from, above all, the very unusual name, Tellworthy.
Tellworthy, yes, certainly a most peculiar name. I remember saying so. Your first husband. Oh, dear me, dear me.
You understand, Mr. Pym, that all this is in absolute confidence.
Of course, of course.
Well, since he is my husband, we naturally want to know something about him. Where is he now, for instance?
Where is he now? But surely I told you. I told you what happened at Marseille.
At Marseille?
Yes, yes. Poor fellow, it was most unfortunate. You must understand, Lady Marden, that although I had met the poor fellow before in Australia, I was never in any way intimate.
Where is he now? That's what we want to know.
Oh, please, Mr. Pym.
Where is he now? But didn't I tell you of the curious fatality at Marseille? Poor fellow, the fishbone.
Fishbone?
Fishbone.
Bone?
Yes, a herring, I understand.
Do you mean he's dead?
Dead? Well, of course he's dead. He's been dead.
Oh, Mr. Pym, you are. Oh, what a husband to have. Oh,
Pull yourself together, Olivia. So, he really is dead this time?
Oh, undoubtedly, undoubtedly. A fishbone lodged in his throat.
Dead. Dead.
But Mrs. Marden.
I think you must excuse me, Mr. Pym, but herring. There's something about herring. Oh, George.
And cook. All right, let's take another, about 6 minutes, I guess.
Wow, that's great. Ever so many twists and turns. This is so much fun. You guys are doing a great job. That's great.
Thank you, David, for coming up with yet another bit of silliness I get to be in.
They did the play, the Mint Theater did the play quite a number of years ago, in rep with another Milne play called the something of the Secret of Blades or something like that.
How long ago are we talking about?
Yeah, and college friend of mine, actually, he was in the company. Jack Davidson played Mr. Pym.
How long ago was this, roughly?
Oh, this was back in the 70s, I think.
Oh,
Or maybe, no, maybe it was the 80s. I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to look up the program.
does anybody know, is anybody putting on little plays like this anywhere in New York? I never hear of it.
Well, the Mint is still doing things like this. Yes, of course.
They are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They've been doing it.
Oh,
That's
I
their
gotta look them up.
specialty. I'm getting to go see their latest one, which is by Harold Brighouse, who wrote the his most famous play is Hobson's Choice.
Sure.
They're doing one of his now, which again is like they unearth these things that are just delicious that nobody has seen for years. So Harry, bless his heart, he's going to review and he has an extra ticket. So I'm going next week to see
Harry Forbes?
Harry Forbes, yeah.
Well, I'll have to suck up to him more. Yeah.
Yeah. They had one last season that Christiane Knoll was in. Christiane Knoll she's done a lot of stuff.
I'm thinking of Christiane Young that we did.
Christiane Knoll, she's the daughter of the Knowles, who used to be our conductor and leading lady with the GNS company I toured with. This is one of her. Almost everything she's done has been musical.
The things I've lost track of. All right, I'm gonna go dig them up.
Yeah, yeah. She was in. She replaced the mother in. What was the musical it was based on? They just showed the film again, based on the book. What the heck is the name of it now? Jimmy Cagney played, very late in life, played the police commissioner.
Ragtime?
What?
Ragtime.
Yes, Ragtime. That's it.
Christiane's done a lot of stuff. Saw her out at Paper Mill years ago in The Student Prince. I've seen her off Broadway.
Yeah, it's called Garside's Career or something like that, I think. They're doing now. Yeah, I love that company because they found all these wonderful plays that nobody, haven't been shown for years and resurrected them. And some of them have been really very good plays.
Is that where did I see Jonathan Hadary do stuff there about 10 years ago?
Sorry?
Jonathan Hadary. He worked there?
I know who he is, but no.
I think I saw him do two things there. Mint Theater.
Oh, I've seen him do stuff, I'm sure, but I'd have to look again through my stuff. I have yet more musicals to report on.
There have been many musicals, and
I think when I finish everything else, I may also do report on the things I've seen out at Ohio Light Opera.
I saw that other production you mentioned with Frank Langella and Alan Bates, and
oh yeah,
it was great. It was just sad because at least in my memory, Alan Bates died very soon after that, and he didn't look good the night I saw him.
Yeah.
At least as I'm remembering, he was energetic, but he didn't look great.
Yeah, I don't remember, but
He had a big monologue, sort of either 11th hour or end of Act One, and it was great. He tore up the stage. It was very funny.
yeah, yeah.
But I was sitting close enough. He,
I had the same feeling when last couple of times I saw Anthony Sher,
oh yeah.
because he just wasn't there. He didn't seem like when he did King Lear and he did Falstaff and Henry IV, and I thought, what's wrong with the guy? And it wasn't too long after that that he passed away.
Hmm. Has anybody seen or heard about Jay Saunders, Henry IV, Falstaff?
Seen which? I'm sorry.
Jay Saunders is doing Falstaff and Henry IV at Theater for
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Anybody heard anything about that?
I actually just at Theater for a New Audience, Henry IV. I just saw it last night, actually, my partner and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible the way they staged it, and it's like if you've ever been in that space, you know it's in the
Yeah.
round. And it was a pretty big cast. They really and they condensed Henry for part two, so it's like
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering what they were going to do to it. And I was a little.
Did they do anything to it, or did they do
It
the
wasn't
Shakespeare?
when they say it's an adaptation, I don't it really isn't. I think they just like cut it to bits, but in a way that kind of made it a little more streamlined and palatable, especially by the time we get to Henry IV part two, it's like who cares? So
But it's still Shakespeare's play. It's not some modern retelling. Okay, good.
yeah, no. And they did bits, elements like with the costumes, they did elements of period, and I think they integrated it really well with the kind of a modern base, which I know you can go either way sometimes, but I think they did a really beautiful job and some really cool choices were made with like lighting and
All
music.
right.
Yeah. How was Jay?
Hmm?
How was Jay?
He played Falstaff.
Falstaff, yeah.
He was great.
Not
I
surprised.
we saw it at 7 p.m. and it was a 2-show day, and this is like a 4-hour show. So we were like, these people are exhausted.
Yeah.
And still killed it. Absolutely
Oh
killed it.
yeah. Well, believe it or not, back the Riverside Shakespeare Company, when it existed, used to do a week where they did some, new plays and stuff. And I did one with Jay called something different, I think it was called. I'll get this. I was a French diplomat, and I had a meeting with this very powerful general played by Jay. And he turned out to be my ex-wife who had had a sex change.
Fascinating.
You can imagine this with Jay Sanders.
Who's like this, he's huge. He's just like a commanding guy.
He's also the loveliest guy you could want to meet.
He seems like he was fantastic, just like his command of the language, and it was like joke.
He really has something.
Sorry, go ahead.
I in Pearly. Pearly Victoria seems fabulous as the villain.
We still have an act to do, so we better get on with it, I guess.
Oh yeah, play. All right.
We're here for a purpose. All right, folks. Act 3, and we're still in the same setting.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Dead.
Oh dear. I'm afraid I broke the news rather hastily. The double shock of losing one husband and being restored to another.
A dispensation of providence, George. One can regard it in no other light.
Yes. Well, I'm much obliged to you, Mr. Pym, for having come down to us this afternoon, and you understand that your news, although tardy, has been very welcome. De mortuis and so forth.
De mortuis.
Well, Goodbye, goodbye, and again, our thanks.
Oh, not at all. I shouldn't have broken the news so hastily. Goodbye, Lady Marden.
Goodbye, Mr. Pym.
I'm afraid I broke the news too hastily. Uh,
Mr. Pym, excuse me, I think this one is yours.
this isn't my hat at all. No, this isn't my hat. This is my hat. Goodbye. Thank you so much. Oh no. I Tellworthy. I think that was the name.
Well, this is wonderful news, Aunt Julia.
Most providential. Well, I must be getting along now, George. Say goodbye to Olivia for me.
Goodbye, Aunt Julia.
No, I'll go this way. And get Olivia out more, George. I don't like these hysterics. You want to be firmer with her.
Yes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Dead.
Uh,
Dead!
May I come in, Mrs. Marden?
Olivia! Olivia!
Mrs. Elworthy.
What? Olivia.
Mrs. Marden is
Olivia, I don't
not
understand.
here, is it?
I don't know where you are, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on.
Olivia, I don't understand.
Oh, darling, if my husband only died at Marseille a few days ago.
Yes, I see. Well, we can soon put that right. The registry office in London. Better go up this afternoon. We can't do these things too quickly. We can stay at an hotel.
You and Mrs. Tellworthy?
Yes, perhaps I'd better stay at my club. Yes, it'd be a bit awkward at first. However, nobody need know, and how much better than what we feared. Olivia!
Mrs. Tellworthy.
Yes, I know, but why do you keep saying it? What's the matter with you? You're so strange today. You're not like the Olivia I know.
Perhaps you don't know me so very well after all.
Nonsense, old girl. You're just my Olivia. Now we can get married again, quietly, and no one will be any the worse.
Married again? Oh, I see. You want me to marry you at a registry office tomorrow.
If we can arrange it by then, yes. I don't know how long these things take, but I should imagine there would be no difficulty.
Oh, no. Oh, no, I think that part of it ought to be quite easy, but,
But what?
well, if you want to marry me tomorrow, George, oughtn't you to propose to me first?
Propose?
Well, yes. It is usual, isn't it, to propose to a person before you marry her, and we do want to do the usual thing, don't we?
But I mean, we...
You are George Marden. I am Olivia Tellworthy. You are attracted by me and think I would make you a good wife, and you want to marry me. Well, very well then. Naturally, you propose to me first.
The baby, she wants to be proposed all over again.
Well, she did rather.
Well, she shall then. Mrs. Tellworthy, I have long admired you in silence, and the time has come to put my admiration into words.
Oh, Mr. Marden.
Olivier, may I call you Olivia?
Yes, George.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Oh, I see. Olivia,
I don't want to interrupt, but oughtn't you to be on your knees? It is usual, I believe.
Really, Olivia, you must allow me to manage my proposal in my own way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do go on.
Well, confounded Olivia, I love you. Will you marry me?
Oh, thank you, George. I will think it over.
Silly girl. Well then, tomorrow morning. No wedding cake, I'm afraid, Olivia. But we'll go and have a good lunch somewhere.
I will think it over, George.
Well, give me a kiss while you're thinking.
I'm afraid you mustn't kiss me until we are actually engaged.
Oh, we needn't take it as seriously as all that.
Oh, but a woman must take a proposal seriously.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is that the whole question, as I heard somebody say once, demands much more anxious thought than either of us has given it. These hasty marriages.
Hasty!
Well, you've only just proposed to me and you want me to marry you tomorrow.
You're talking perfect nonsense, Olivia. You know quite well that our case is utterly different from, well, any other case.
Well, all the same, one must ask oneself questions. With a young girl with a young girl, love may well seem to be all that matters. But with a woman of my age, it is different. I have to ask myself whether you can afford to support a wife.
You know perfectly well I can afford to support a wife as my wife should be supported.
Oh, I am glad. Then your income, you're not really worried about that at all?
You know perfectly well what my income is. I see no reason for anxiety in the future.
Ah, well, very well. Then we needn't think about it anymore.
You know, I can't make out what you're up to. Don't you want to get married to, legalize this extraordinary situation in which we are placed?
I must consider the whole question very carefully. I can't just jump at the very first offer I've had since my husband died.
Oh, so I'm under consideration, eh?
Well, every suitor is.
Oh, very well. Go on. Go on.
Well, then there's your niece. You have a niece living with you. Of course, Dinah is a delightful girl, but one doesn't like marrying into a household where there's another grown-up woman. But, well, perhaps she'll be getting married herself soon.
I see no prospect of that.
Oh, it would make it so much easier, George, if she did.
Is this a threat, Olivia? Are you telling me that if I do not allow young Strange to marry Dinah, you will not marry me?
A threat? Oh, no, George. But I was just wondering if you love me as much as Brian loves Dinah. You do love me.
Of course I do, old girl.
You're sure it's not just my pretty face that attracts you? Love, which is based upon mere outward appearances, cannot result in lasting happiness, as one of our thinkers has observed.
Why should you doubt my love? You can't pretend that we haven't been happy together. I've been a good pal to you, eh? We suit each other, old girl.
Do we?
Of course we do.
I wonder. When two people of our age think of getting married, one wants to be quite sure that there is real community of ideas between them. Supposing that after we've been married some years, we found ourselves getting estranged from each other upon such questions as Dinah's future, or the comparatively trivial matter like the right color for a curtain, or the advice to be given to a friend who has innocently contracted a bigamous marriage. Think how bitterly we should regret our hasty plunge into a matrimony which has no true partnership, whether of tastes or ideas, or even of consciences. Ah, me.
Unfortunately for your argument, Olivia, I can't answer you out of your own mouth. You seem to have forgotten what you said this morning in the case of young Strange.
Oh, but is it quite fair, George, to drag up what was said this morning?
You brought it upon yourself.
I, oh, well, and what did I say this morning?
You said that it was quite enough that Strange was a gentleman and in love with Dinah for me to let them marry each other.
Oh, well, but is that enough, George?
Well, you said so.
Well, George, if you think so, well, I'm quite willing to risk it.
My dear, you see,
Then you do think it's enough?
I, uh, yes, I think so.
Oh, my darling one, how jolly. Then we can have a double wedding.
A double one?
Yes, you and me, Brian and Dinah.
Now look here, Olivia, once and for all, understand, I am not to be blackmailed into giving my consent to Dinah's engagement. Neither blackmailed nor tricked. Our marriage has nothing whatever to do with Dinah's.
Oh, no, dear. I quite understand. They may take place at about the same time, but they have nothing whatever to do with each other.
I see no prospect of Dinah's marriage taking place for many years.
Oh, no, dear, that was what I said.
You said, I see. Now look here, Olivia, let's have this perfectly clear. You apparently insist on treating my proposal as serious.
But isn't it? Have you been trifling with me?
You know perfectly well what I mean. You treat it as an ordinary proposal for a man to a woman who have never been anything to each other before. Well, very well then. Will you kindly tell me what you propose to do if you decide to accept me? You do not suggest that we should go on living together unmarried.
Of course not, George. What would the county, I mean, heaven, I mean, the law, I mean, oh, of course not. Besides, it's so unnecessary. If I decide to accept you, of course I shall marry you.
Quite so. And if you decide to refuse me, what will you do?
Nothing.
Meaning by that?
Well, just that, George. I shall stay here just as before. I like this house. It wants a little redecorating, but I do like it, George. Yes, I shall be perfectly happy here.
I see. You will continue to live down here in spite of what you just said now about the immorality of it.
What is there immoral in a widow living alone in a big country house with perhaps the niece of a dear friend of hers staying with her to keep her company?
Oh, and pray, what shall I be doing when you're so very kindly taken possession of my house for me?
You? Oh, I can't think. Traveling, I expect.
Thank you. And suppose I refuse to be turned out of my own house.
Well, then, well, seeing that we can't both be in it, it looks as though you'd have to turn me out. Oh, there must be legal ways of doing these things. You'd have to consult your solicitor again.
Legal ways.
Well, I mean, you couldn't just throw me out, could you? You'd have to get an injunction against me or prosecute me for trespass or something. Of course, I shouldn't go if I could help it. I do like the house so much. It would make an awfully unusual case, wouldn't it? Oh, the papers would be full of it.
Papers.
But extra special. Widow of well-known ex-convict takes possession of JP's house. Special, special.
All right, I've had enough of this. Do you mean all this nonsense?
Well, what I do mean is that I am in no hurry to go up to London and get married. I love the country just now, and after this morning, well, I'm rather tired of husbands.
I have never heard so much damned nonsense in my life. I will leave you to come back to your senses.
Uh, oh, may I come in, Mrs. Pym? Mrs. Martin?
Pym.
Mr. Martin is not here, is he?
No. Do you want to see him? I'll go get him.
No, not for the world. There is no immediate danger of his returning, Mrs. Martin.
Oh, no, I don't think so, Mr. Pym. But what is it? You.
I took the liberty of returning by the window in the hope of finding you alone.
Yes.
Mr. Martin will be so angry with me, and very rightly. Oh, I blame myself. I blame myself entirely. I don't know how I can have been so stupid.
Oh, what is it, Mr. Pym? My first husband hasn't come to life again, has he?
Oh, no. The fact is, his name was Paul Pellwhittle.
Whose? My husband's?
Yes, Henry Pellwhittle, poor fellow.
But my husband's name was Telworthy.
Oh, no, oh dear, no, Pellwhittle. It came back to me suddenly, just as I reached the gate. Henry Pellwhittle, poor fellow.
Really, Mr. Pym, I ought to know.
No, Pellwhittle.
But who is Pellwhittle?
The man I told you about, who met with the sad fatality in Marseille. Henry Pellwhittle. Or was it Ernest? Henry Pellwhittle, poor fellow.
Mr. Pym, you said his name was Telworthy. How could you?
Oh, I blame myself. I blame myself entirely.
But how could you think of a name like Telworthy if it wasn't Telworthy?
That's the really interesting thing about the whole matter.
Oh, yes, Mr. Pym, all your visits here today have been very interesting.
Oh, very interesting, very interesting. You see, Mrs. Martin, when I made my first appearance here this morning, I was received by Miss Diana, who...
Dinah.
I beg your pardon.
Dinah. Her name is Dinah.
Oh, you're quite right, Dinah. Oh, yes, Miss Dinah. Yes, she was in rather a communicative mood, and I supposed by way of passing the time that she mentioned that before your marriage to Mr. Martin, you had been a Mrs.
Telworthy.
Telworthy, yes, well, of course. She also mentioned Australia. Now, by some curious process of the brain, which strikes me as decidedly curious, when I was trying to recollect the name of the poor fellow on the boat, whom you will remember I had also met in Australia, the fact is that his other name was also stored in my memory, a name equally peculiar. This fact, I say...
Yes, I quite understand.
I blame myself. I blame myself entirely.
Oh, you mustn't do that, Mr. Pym.
Oh, but Mrs. Marden, can you forgive me for the needless distress I have caused you today?
Oh, you mustn't worry about that, please.
And you will tell your husband, you'll break the news to him.
Oh, yes, I'll break the news to him.
Well, then, I think before he comes back, I will say goodbye and...
Just a moment, Mr. Pym. Let us have it quite clear this time. You never knew my husband, Jacob Telworthy.
No.
You never met him in Australia.
No.
You never saw him on the boat.
No.
And nothing whatever happened to him at Marseille.
No.
Is that right?
I think so.
Oh, very well then. Since his death was announced in Australia 6 years ago, he is presumably still dead.
Undoubtedly.
Oh, then goodbye, Mr. Pym, and thank you so much for all your trouble.
Not at all, Mrs. Martin. I blame myself. I blame myself entirely.
Oh, you mustn't do that.
Hello, there's Mr. Pym.
Oh, yes, yes,
Oh, Mr. Pym, you mustn't run away without even saying how do you do. Are you staying to tea?
Oh, Mr. Pym has
I'm
to
afraid.
hurry away, Dinah. You mustn't keep him.
Well, but you'll come back again.
I feel that I'm only passing by, Miss Dinah.
You can take Mr. Pym as far as the gate.
Thank you. If you would be so kind, Miss Dinah.
Come along then, Mr. Pym.
I'll catch you up.
I want to hear all about your first wife.
But I haven't got a first wife.
You haven't really told me anything yet.
I'll catch you up. I just wanted to say, if you don't think it chic, that I'm on your side, if I may be, and if I can help you at all, I shall be very proud of being allowed to.
Brian, you dear. That's sweet of you. But it's quite all right now, you know.
What?
Yes, that's what Mr. Pym came back to say. He'd made a mistake about the name.
Good Lord!
George is the only husband I have.
What? You mean that the whole thing, that Pym...
The whole thing.
This silly ass.
Oh, no, no. I'm sure he didn't mean to be. Brian, do you know anything about the law?
The law? I'm afraid not. I hate the law. Why?
Well, I was just wondering. Suppose that George and I had accidentally married each other a second time, thinking that the first marriage wasn't quite right, and then we found the first marriage was all right. Well,
What on earth do you mean?
what I mean is that there's nothing wrong in marrying the same person twice.
Oh, no, 100 times, if you like, I should think.
Oh,
After all, in France, they always go through it twice, don't they? Once before the mayor or somebody, and once in church.
oh, of course they don't. How silly of me. You know, that's a very good idea. They ought to do that more in England.
Well, once will be enough for Dinah and me, if you can work it. Do you think there's any chance, Olivia?
Every chance, dear.
I say, do you really? Have you squared it? I mean, has he?
You go and catch them up now. We'll talk about it later on.
Bless you. Righto.
Good-looking fellow, Strange, what?
Oh, Brian? Oh, yes, isn't he? Such a nice boy.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Ba-dum, ba-bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Got £50 for that picture the other day, didn't he?
Ah, yes. Of course, he's only just begun.
Critics think well of him, what?
They all say he has genius. Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it.
No, no, no. Of course, I don't profess to know anything about painting myself.
Well, you've never had time to take it up, dear.
No, no, of course, I know what I like. Can't say I see much in this newfangled stuff. If a man can paint, why can't he paint like Rubens or Reynolds or...
Oh, I suppose we all have our own styles. Brian will be finding his directly. Of course, he's only just beginning.
Yeah, yeah. But the critics think a lot of him, what?
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah. Good-looking fellow. You nearly finished them?
Oh, very nearly. Have you seen my scissors anywhere?
Scissors. Scissors.
Ah, it's all right. Here they are.
Ah. Um, where are you thinking of hanging them?
I don't quite know. I had thought of this room, but I'm not quite sure.
Yes. Brightened up the room a bit.
Yes.
Yes, these are a bit faded.
You know, sometimes I think I love them, and sometimes I'm not quite sure.
The best way is to hang them up. See how you like them. You can always take them down again.
that's a good idea, George.
Best way.
Yes, I think we might try that. The only thing is,
What?
well, the carpets and the chair covers and the cushions and things.
What about them?
Well, if we had new curtains,
You'd want a new carpet, eh?
well, new chair covers anyhow.
Hmm. Well, why not?
Oh, but
We're not so hard up as all that, you know.
no, I don't suppose we are really.
No, 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 yes. I mean, no.
But I suppose it would mean I should have to go up to London to choose them. You know, that's rather a nuisance.
I don't know. We might go up together one day.
Oh, well, of course, if we were up for anything else.
Yes, yes, that's what I meant.
Oh. Oh, by the way, George,
Yes.
I told Brian, and of course he'll tell Dinah that Mr. Pym had made a mistake about the name.
Mistake about the name.
Yes, yes, I told Brian that the whole thing was a mistake. I thought that was the simplest way.
Olivia. Then you mean that Brian and Dinah think that we have been married all the time?
Yes.
Olivia, does that mean that you are thinking of marrying me?
At your old registry office?
Yes.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Do you want me to very much?
My darling, you know I do.
Oh, we should have to keep it very quiet, George.
Yes, of course. Nobody need know. We don't want anybody to know. No. And now that you've put Brian and Dinah off the scent by telling them that was very clever of you, Olivia. I should never have thought of that.
Oh, George. Oh, you don't think it was wrong, do you?
Oh, innocent deception, perfectly harmless.
Oh, yes, dear. That was what I thought about what I was doing.
Then you'll come up to London tomorrow? And if we should see a carpet or anything else that we want?
Oh, George.
And lunch at the Carlton, what?
Oh,
And bit of a honeymoon in Paris?
oh, what fun.
Give us a kiss, old girl.
George,
Don't ever leave me, old girl.
don't ever send me away, old boy.
I won't. I don't think I should have, really. You know, I
I say.
Hello.
Give me one too, George. Brian won't mind.
Do you mind, Mr. Strange?
Oh, I say, sir.
We'll risk it, Dinah.
Did you notice that one? It wasn't just an ordinary affectionate kiss. That was a special bless you, my child one. Wasn't it?
You do talk nonsense, darling.
Mm. Well, I'm so happy now that Mr. Pym has relented about your first husband.
Yes, yes. Stupid fellow, Pym, what?
Yes, absolute idiot, I think.
And now that George has relented about my first husband.
You get on much too quickly. So, you want to marry my Dinah, eh?
Well, I do rather, sir.
Well, you'd better have a talk with me about it, eh, Brian?
Thank you very much, sir.
Come along, then. I'm going up to town after tea, so we'd better...
I
got
say,
a
are
little-
you going up to London?
Yes, a little business.
Eh?
Never you mind, young woman. Come along, we'll take a stroll and look at the pigs.
Righto.
Oh, George, don't go too far away. I may want you.
All right. I'll be out on the terrace. Give me a shout if you want me.
Hmm. Brian and George always discuss me in front of the pigs. So tactless of them. I say, are you going to London too, darling?
Tomorrow,
What are you going to do in London?
shopping and one or two little things.
With George?
Oh, yes.
I say, wasn't it lovely about Pym?
Lovely.
Yes, he told me all about it. Making such a hash of things, I mean.
Oh, did he make a hash of things?
Well, I mean, keeping on coming like that. And if you look at it all round, well, for all he had to say, he needn't have come at all.
Well, I didn't think I should put it quite like that, Dinah.
Say, aren't they jolly?
Oh, I'm glad everybody likes them. Tell George I'm ready, dear.
I say, is he going to put them up for you?
Well, I thought perhaps he could reach better.
All right, I'll tell him. George! Brian is just telling George about the 5 shillings he has in the post office. George!
Coming.
Slow music while the curtains go up.
What is it, darling?
I wish you'd help me put up these curtains.
Of course, dear. I better get the library step.
Madam, I have the honor to inform you that henceforward you are at liberty to regard me as your affianced husband.
Darling!
No, no, stay there. Go on. Playing.
What is it?
Oh, portrait of Lady Strange.
Oh,
Are you ready, dear?
Yes, quite ready.
Oh, take care, dear.
That's all right. It's all right. They're a little long.
uh, Mrs. Marden, I've just remembered. His name was Ernest Paul Whittle, not Henry. No, not Henry. And curtain. Oh dear, there are differences in my script from yours, which.
Oh, great job, everyone. That
I was
was,
looking forward to this for the past 2.5 hours. Oh my God.
oh, yeah. The mustache comes off.
Is
Ah,
anybody
Wait,
looking
that
at
wasn't real? God.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you
that was
all. And thank you,
revised the script
David.
a
What
little
a
bit.
treat.
I beg your pardon?
I said thank you all and thank you, David. What a treat.
Yeah, thank you.
that is so much fun.
Yeah, it's
What
delicious.
delicious silliness. Yeah.
I'll try to do some more him somewhere along the line. He's got some nice one acts too, so among other things.
There's a line in
All in public domain, David?
I'm sorry?
Are they all in public domain now?
Well, up to a certain point they are, yeah.
This one was from 1919, and most of them were. He was actually sort of working as a playwright and getting some of his plays done before Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh is now in the public domain.
So
But
this is
Yeah, he goes up into
this is
I think the
pre-Pooh
30s.
theater. Okay. Pre-Pooh theater we're doing.
yes, yes.
well, anyway, I had a couple of
There's a line from Patton, the film, that comes to mind. He's out at some battlefield that he claims to remember from his past life, talking to his aide. And he says something like, the way it should be is me and Hitler would draw at 20 paces or something, and that would decide the war. And he says, like, God, how I hate the 20th century. And his aide says, yes, sir, the world grew up. And that comes to mind when we're doing these plays, is these delicious silliness. And then theater got serious. And it should, I suppose. You've got John Osborne and all these, that sort of thing. And that's why I was asking, does anybody write this kind of nuttiness anymore? Because it seems too innocent for our age.
yeah.
But I love it. And we all have so much fun doing it.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
There
I
are
mean,
still farces
look
being
at
done.
look at Milton his other things, like Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin, and there's a real sense of innocence and all that. So,
Yeah, but that was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it does, represent,
I heard the most horrible thing on the BBC today along these lines. I won't dwell on it. I'll do this quick as I can. Everybody, well, except for Leia, a lot of us are old enough to remember the 70s and the 80s when totalitarian countries could find the BBC and Radio Free America, I think it was called, and all these, all these things that were both, in some ways, at least according to this commentator I heard, both business and governments were aligned in trying to free the world, and now we have the opposite. And it's
we're I just want to call you attention to the fact we're still recording.
Oh Lord, bit of politics, eh? Sorry.
Before we get ourselves in trouble.
I just think a great job, everyone, and thanks so much, David, for doing this. And it's so great to find these plays and other perspectives.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for including me.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you.